In the eastern part of Tianxuan, the mountain gate of the Yunxiao sect is located in the endless Yunqiu mountain. In the end, the clouds roamed, and their spirits were so heavy that they could almost turn into water droplets. The waterfalls in the mountains hang like silver practice, and the peaks far away penetrate into the sky. Occasionally, there are sword lights that break through the sky. They are traces left by disciples of the sect when practicing sections. This is the holy land in the minds of countless immortals, and it is also the only home of Lin Ruochen, who is only 16 years old. The first long sunlight in the morning was just in the mountains. Lin Ruochen was already standing on a remote platform, with a light sword in his hand, emitting a crisp buzz. He was slender and wore a simple blue robe, with a handsome face that was a bit like a mortal. His eyes were as bright as stars, and he felt a lonely cold that was inconsistent with his age. At this moment, he was closing his eyes and concentrating his mind, his spirit flowing slowly and with starlight flashing on the sword. Star Sword, the first move, the galaxy wall. Lin Ruochen shouted softly, suddenly opened his eyes, and waved the long sword in his hand. The sword light was like a galaxy river. In an instant, a huge rock in front of him was split into 2.5, and the incision was as smooth as a lens. There is still a chilling chill in the air, making people feel cold and irritated. It's still not enough. Lin Ruochen glanced at the long sword in his hand, muttering himself. There was a dissatisfaction in his voice, as if he was not satisfied with the power of this drama. The Star Sword is the supreme secret technique of the Yunxiao sword sect. It is powerful enough to block mountains and rivers in one stroke, but it is unusually difficult to cultivate, and even if you are not careful, it will backfire yourself. Since Lin Ruochen was taken as a disciple by the sect leader, he plunged into this drama cultivation, almost reaching a level of confusion. But the deeper he went, the more he felt that this drama was like a mountain that could never be reached, making him both fascinated and painful. Ruochen is secretly practicing this sword again? A cheerful voice came from afar, interrupting Lin Ruochen's thoughts. He turned around and saw a burly Dahan strode towards him, his face full of beards and his smile was full of smiles. It was his elder brother Zhang Haoren. Sister brother. Lin Ruochen pointed his head slightly, said hello, and immediately turned his eyes back to Jian, as if he was in a state of chatting. Zhang Haoren didn't mind either. He laughed, walked over and patted his shoulder. You guy, you know how to practice sect all day long, and you are not afraid of hurting yourself. He heard that today is the day of the sect's trial. Have you prepared it? This is a good opportunity to show your face. If you have done it well, you may be able to gain the knowledge of the elders and give you some good things. Try it. Lin Ruochen raised his head, and a flash of excitement appeared in his eyes. The Yunxiao sect holds a trial every 3 years, allowing young disciples to go down the mountain to practice. This is not only a test of cultivation, but also a nourishing mind and nature. The location of this trial was the secret realm of the clouds in the eastern region. It was said that there were many treasures left in ancient times, but they were also full of dangers. If you were not careful, you might lose your life. Yes, it's the secret realm of cloud. Zhang Haoren pointed a little, and saw Lin Ruochen finally reacting and laughed even more happily. I heard that there may be inheritance left by ancient cultivators in this secret realm. If you can get it, it will definitely be of great help to you in cultivating the Star Sword. Don't tell me you are not interested. Lin Ruochen heard a few words ancient sword cultivation, his eyes lit up slightly, and his hands holding sword tightened unconsciously. He was silent for a moment before he said softly, I will go. That's right. Zhang Haoren patted his back vigorously, almost slapped Lin Ruochen. With my junior brother here, it's okay to keep you. Let's go, the elders are already waiting at the main peak, so we don't miss it. Lin Ruochen helplessly pointed his head, put away his long sword, and followed Zhang Haoren toward the main peak. On the way, Zhang Haoren was talking about the precautions of the trial, such as the monster in the secret realm is fierce, don't run around, such as when you encounter a treasure, don't rush to see if there are any traps first. Lin Ruochen just listened silently, and occasionally he should have a sound. His brain was always thinking about the so-called ancient drama cultivation inheritance. There were many disciples gathered in front of the main peak hall, with the sound of the crowd, and the atmosphere was as warm as the new year. As soon as Lin Ruochen appeared, he attracted a lot of attention. After all, he was a disciple of the sect leader and a genius sect master. Although he didn't come with people very much, his reputation was quite good in the sect. "Look, that's Lin Ruochen. I heard that he practiced the first move like Star Sword a year ago. This time I will definitely make a big difference. Humph, what a genius, but he is so lucky that he is so arrogant that he is attracted by the sect leader. I want to see what he can perform in the secret realm." The discussions were heard one after another, some admiration and some jealousy. Lin Ruochen seemed to have not heard of it, standing by the crowd, his eyes swept coldly around him until a white-robed old man walked up to the platform, and the scene calmed down. Tribute: the location of this trial is the secret realm of the cloud. The trial lasts for 1 month. You need to find spirit grass and kill demon beasts in the secret realm, and accumulate points. In the end, the top 10 people can get the sect prize. The elder's voice was low and powerful, with unquestionable majesty. But remember, the secret realm is full of dangers. If you encounter an unbeaten enemy, quickly crush the sending talisman and leave, and save your life first. Do you understand? I understand. The disciples responded with a loud voice, and the sound shocked the birds in front of the hall. The elders were satisfied with the head, and then with a swipe, a huge transmission method appeared in the center of the square, and the light flashed, emitting a heavy and turbulent wave. The disciples stepped into the temple in sequence, and their figures disappeared in an instant. Lin Ruochen and Zhang Haoren were the last group to enter. Before entering the military method, Zhang Haoren did not forget to quit. "Ruochen, remember, don't show off. If you have any questions, look for your brother." Lin Ruochen pointed his head a little, then stepped into the air, and felt a flash in front of him. The next moment, there was a strange forest under his feet. There was a faint fishy atmosphere in the air, and there was a low growl of a demon from afar. The trees around it were tall and dense, almost covering the skylight, making people feel pressured. "This is the secret realm of cloud." Lin Ruochen murmured softly, holding the long sword in his hand tightly, and his mind carefully scattered, exploring the surrounding static. Zhang Haoren was trying to say something, but suddenly heard a sharp and broken voice, and then a black shadow rushed out of the forest and rushed straight to the two people. "It's an iron-clawed wolf. Be careful." Zhang Haoren shouted loudly, and the giant sword in his hand suddenly slapped out. The sword was as angry as a rainbow, and it directly split the black shadow into 2.5, with blood all over the ground. Lin Ruo's eyebrows were slightly snaked, his eyes swept over the iron-clawed wolf's body, and he said in a low voice, "I just came in and encountered the 3rd level of demon beast. It seems that this secret realm is indeed not simple." "Hey, what are you afraid of? With your brother here, these little things won't hurt you." Zhang Haoren grinned, put away the giant sword, dug out a demon pill from the iron claw wolf and inserted it into the bag of the storage bag. Let's go deeper, it's useless to get these little monsters around." Lin Ruochen didn't say anything, but just followed silently. The two walked all the way to the depths of the secret realm. Along the way, they encountered several more demons, all of which were solved by Zhang Haoren in 3 or 2. Lin Ruochen didn't take any action, as if he was deliberately conserving his strength, and his eyes kept sweeping around him from time to time, as if he was looking for something. Until the 3rd day, the two of them arrived in front of a deep valley, and there was a sudden slight fluctuation in the air. Lin Ruochen stopped suddenly, his eyebrows were tightly locked, and his hand holding the sword shook slightly. "What's wrong?" Zhang Haoren saw that his expression was strange and asked quickly. "I have a dramatic atmosphere, a strong dramatic atmosphere." Lin Ruochen's voice was low, and his eyes were staring at the depths of the eye valley, as if he was attracted by something. He could feel that the drama was old and magnificent, with a sense of pressure that made him palpitations, even stronger than the star drama he had cultivated. "Sprayer? Are you sure?" Zhang Haoren was a little confused, but when Lin Ruochen looked serious, he didn't dare to be careless, and held the giant slab tightly. Then let's go in and take a look. Lin Ruochen ordered a little and stepped into the valley first, while Zhang Haoren was tightened afterwards. The light in the valley was dim, the stone walls on both sides were covered with moss, and the air was filled with a smell of rottenness. The more I walked, the more obvious the drama became. Even the lighter the Lin Ruochen's drama was unconsciously released, as if it was responding to something. Finally, at the deepest part of the island valley, they saw a broken stone platform. An ancient long sword was inserted on the stone platform. The sword was full of complex runes and emitted a faint cold light. The air around the drama was slightly distorted, and countless dramatic shadows were floating, like the soul guarding this drama. Is this ancient magic sword? Zhang Haoren widened his eyes, his voice filled with shock. Although he was not a cultivator, he could also feel the extraordinariness of this cultivator. His aura was so strong that he felt pressured as later cultivator. Lin Ruochen didn't say anything, but just walked closer to the stone platform, staring at the sword, and a flash of heat flashed in his eyes. He could feel that this drama had some inexplicable connection with his star drama, and it might even be the breakthrough mechanism he had been looking for. If you are not bad, don't urge it. This drama looks unsimple, and you may have some restrictions. Zhang Haoren hurriedly reminded, always feeling a strange feeling in this place. But Lin Ruochen seemed to have not heard of it, so he reached out and grabbed the sword. Just as his finger was about to touch the shank, a dazzling light suddenly burst out, and a low roar came from the underground, and the entire valley began to shake violently. What's the matter? Zhang Haoren was shocked and hurriedly in front of Lin Ruochen. The ground around the stone platform cracked, and countless black air emerged from the ground, condensing into a huge shadow. Those who are good at placing the forbidden lands will die. The faint roared and immediately slapped it with one palm. The palm was like a knife, carrying the air that destroyed the sky and the earth. Lin Ruochen's pupils suddenly shrank, and he almost instinctively pulled out the sword to resist. The starry sword exploded with all his strength, and the sword light came out like a galaxy, colliding with the palm. A huge sound of the swaying sound was crushed in an instant. Lin Ruochen's entire person was shaken for several feet, and a silk of blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth. Listen! Zhang Haoren roared, and the giant slammed and tried to hold the shadow, but as soon as his attack approached, he was swallowed by black air, and he couldn't hurt the other party at all. My brother, don't fight hard. This is not something we can deal with. Lin Ruochen gritted his teeth and stood up, pressing his lower body into his blood, and his eyes were still staring at the magic sword. He knew that if he retreated, he might never get the sword again. But at this moment, a cold voice suddenly came from outside the valley. How dare you show off your soul in the district? Before the sound of the words came to an end, a white light sank like a meteor, directly piercing the shadow's chest. The movie let out an unwilling roar, which immediately turned into black air and dissipated without any trace. Lin Ruochen and Zhang Haoren turned around at the same time, and saw a woman in white walking towards the entrance of the Yacht Valley. Her temperament was as cold as the moon, and her every move showed a kind of power that she dared not be directly evident. Who are you? Lin Ruochen tightened the long sword, his eyes full of vigilance. The woman glanced at him lightly, and her voice was as cold as ice. Su Qingli. For your good fortune in the Taoist Taoism, I will save your life this time. But you can't take this sword away. Lin Ruo's eyebrows were snaking, and he wanted to turn around. He saw Su Qingli snatching his hand and an invisible barrier covering the magic sword. No matter how he urged the sword, he could not break through. His heart sank, and he felt that the arrival of this woman was absolutely inconvenient. Far beyond the secret realm, in a dark cave, a young man with a cold face opened his eyes quietly and a sneer appeared on the corner of his mouth. The ancient magic sword is finally here. Lin Ruochen, I want to see how long you can protect this thing this time. His voice was low and poisonous, and there was a flash of illness in his eyes. It was the young master of the power of the demonic power, Mo Xianfeng. The air in the valley was still left with the intense heat of the battle just now, and the cracks on the stone walls and scattered gravels complained about the surprise just now. Lin Ruochen stood there, the blood on the corner of his mouth had not been wiped away yet, and the long sword in his hand moved slightly, and a low bird appeared, as if he was unwilling to accept the ancient magic sword covered by a barrier. His eyes were tightly locked at Su Qingli, a woman in white in front of him, with a little vigilance and confusion in his eyes. Su Qingli stood in the middle of the valley, dressed like snow, and her temperament was as cold as a fairy walking out of a scroll. She just glanced at Lin Ruochen lightly, then turned to look at the magic sword, with a complicated look in her eyes, as if she knew something unknown. Her existence made this already suppressed Yi Valley a little more powerful. Even Zhang Haoren's carefree temperament kept a few points and held the giant sword's hand tightened. "Why do you say I can't take it?" Lin Ruochen finally opened his mouth, his voice low, and he felt a little unwilling. He could feel that this magical drama had a great connection with his star drama. If he could get it, he might be able to make his drama a step further. But now, the woman who suddenly appeared easily sealed the magic sword, making his heart feel like a big stone was pressed down, and he couldn't stretch it out no matter how hard it was. Su Qingli heard his words and looked slightly cold and cold. "You don't understand the arrival of this sword. If you take it away successfully, it will only lead to the murder. Take a step back, boy, your swordsmanship is good, there is no need to save your life for a while." Her language was dull and she had an unquestionable majesty, which shocked Lin Ruochen. He gritted his teeth and wanted to say something else. Zhang Haoren grabbed his arm first and said in a low voice, "Ruochen, I heard her. There is an evil door here. Let's retreat first, let's decide." Lin Ruochen was silent for a moment, his eyes wandered back and forth between Su Qingli and the magic sword. Finally, he was still a little bit, put away the long sword, and turned around and walked out of the valley. Zhang Haoren relaxed his voice and kept following him. Before leaving, he didn't forget to look at Su Qingli for a few more times, as if he wanted to figure out the woman's coming. Su Qingli stood there, watching the two leave until their figures disappeared into the Yegu, and then turned around and stretched out his hand to touch the invisible barrier. A white light appeared on her fingertips, and the barrier moved slightly, as if she had developed some kind of co-bearing with her. She murmured something in a low voice. The sound was too light, almost covered by the sound of the moon, but her expression became more and more solemn, as if 1,000 pounds were pressed on her shoulders. At the same time, Lin Ruochen and Zhang Haoren had already walked out of the valley and arrived at a relatively open forest open space. The sunlight penetrated through the dense tree crown, and the spotted light and shadow fell on the two people, and the haze between Lin Ruo's eyebrows could not be dispersed. He stopped and held the sword's hand tightened unconsciously, his brain was full of the shadow of the magic sword. "If you are chaotic, don't think too much. Although that drama looks extraordinary, the woman's words are not wrong. Our current strength will only endure." Zhang Haoren saw his model and couldn't help but say. Although he was careless at ordinary times, he was really concerned about Lin Ruochen, and when he saw him feeling absent-minded, he felt a little uncomfortable. Lin Ruochen didn't say anything, but just looked down at the long sword in his hand, with a flash of prick in his eyes. He knew that Zhang Haoren had a reasonable statement, but the thought of Taoism deep in his heart was like a group of fire, which made his heart burst into flames. From small to large, the only thing he could rely on was this sword, this path. If he gave up all this pursuit, what else could he have left? "My brother, I know you're good for me, but that sword. I can't just give up." Lin Ruochen finally raised his head, his voice low and determined, "I'll find a way to get it." Zhang Haoren opened his mouth and wanted to say something. Seeing the unmovable determination in Lin Ruochen's eyes, he finally sighed and patted his shoulder. "Okay, you guy, you are as stubborn as a bull. But remember, no matter what decision you make, your brother will accompany you." Lin Ruochen pointed a little, and a warm feeling surged in his heart. Although he is not good at speaking, he has always remembered Zhang Haoren's feelings. After a while, the two of them continued to walk towards the depths of the secret realm, intending to complete the trial mission first, and then inquire about the traces of the magic sword. In the next few days, the two of them practiced 4 times in the secret realm of Yun, killed many demons, collected a few precious spirit grasses, and rose in a steady step. Relying on his later cultivation, Zhang Haoren swept along the way, and almost never encountered any opponents like him. Lin Ruochen chose to observe and explore more, and occasionally took action, but he could always be fatal, which made Zhang Haoren unable to help but praise his magic for the rapid progress of his magic. But just as the 10th day of the trial was about to go, a violent spiritual wave suddenly came from the secret realm, as if a certain restriction was touched, and the air became suppressed. Lin Ruochen and Zhang Haoren were about to kill a 4-level demon beast, but were interrupted by this sudden change. When they looked at each other, they saw confusion and vigilance in the eyes of each other. This silence seems to be from the corner of the Eye Valley. Lin Ruochen looked away, his eyes widening away towards the Eye Valley, and he felt a sense of bad premonition in his heart. The magic sword was sealed by Su Qingli glass. It is logical that there should be no change, but the fluctuation of the spirit clearly carries a familiar sword. Let's go back and take a look. Zhang Haoren didn't think much, but directly carried the giant sword and rushed back. Lin Ruochen was nervous afterwards. The two of them passed through the dense forest as quickly as possible, and soon came back to the deep valley. Before they could enter, they heard a fierce fight, surrounded by a low roar and a burst of spirit collision. Lin Ruochen's heart was tightened, and he almost instinctively pulled out the long sword, and he rushed in as soon as he flashed. Zhang Haoren saw that his posture was also busy following him. Inside the valley, the scene was in chaos. The barrier that originally covered the magic sword has been broken, and countless black airs have emerged from the ground, condensing into a shadow of a shaman, surrounding a figure in white. Su Qingli held a long whip with a flowing spirit. The whip shadow was like a dragon, and the spirit turned into countless light blades, dissipating the shadows one by one, but her face was a little white, which obviously had consumed a lot of spiritual power. On the other side of the valley, a cold-faced young man was standing next to the stone platform, holding a black bead with a strange light in his hand, and a sneer was curled up at the corner of his mouth. His eyes were staring at the divine sword, with greed and crazy spirit in his eyes, which was Mo Xianfeng, the young master of the magic power. Su Qingli, you are really guarding this sword here. Unfortunately, your band will never be able to hold back my magic pearl. Mo Xianfeng's voice was low and poisonous. The light of the pearl in his hand flashed, and several black airs stormed out, turning into a shadow and swept towards Su Qingli, trying to drag her movements. Su Qingli snorted coldly, swung the long whip, shattering the shadows in as many cases, and then her eyes swept to Mo Xianfeng, and her voice was cold. The remnants of the demonic path dared to touch this thing? Do you know that once this sword falls into your hand, there will be no sunshine in the Tianxuan Great Wall? Ha ha ha, what's the life and death of Tianxuan Dalun to me? I just want the power of this sword. Mo Xianfeng laughed loudly, and the magic pearl in his hand shone brightly, and countless black airs swept towards the sword like a tide, trying to pull it out. At this moment, Lin Ruochen and Zhang Haoren rushed into the ice valley. When they saw this scene, they were both surprised. Starry sword, the galaxy. He shouted softly, and the sword light was like the sky, and it rushed Mo Xianfeng with the spiral of the air. Mo Xianfeng sneered, his figure flashed, and he easily avoided this blow. Then he slapped out with a backhand, and the black air turned into a giant palm, directly shocking Lin Ruochen back several steps. Lin Ruochen, a genius of Yunshao Jian sect? Humph, even with this ability, can you dare to harm me? Mo Xianfeng smiled coldly, his eyes flashed with a flash of murderous thoughts, and the light of the demonic pearl in his hand rose again, ready to give Lin Ruochen a fatal blow. But at this moment, Su Qingli swung his long whip, and the whip was as shadow as a dragon, directly squeezing Mo Xianfeng's attack. She turned her head and glanced at Lin Ruochen, and her voice was still cold. Don't be moved, you can't deal with this person, leave. Lin Ruochen gritted his teeth. Although he was unwilling to accept it, he knew the difference between him and Mo Xianfeng, so he had to retreat aside and work with Zhang Haoren to deal with the black shadows to help Su Qingli reduce the pressure. After half a day of war, the spirits were everywhere in the valley, and the stone walls were torn apart by the sword and magic. Although Su Qingli has a profound cultivation, she is also feeling tired when facing Mo Xuanfeng's magical beads and the continuous shadows. Mo Xianfeng became more and more braver the more he fought, and the fierce look in his eyes became more and more intense. It was obviously because he wanted to win the magic sword. Su Qingli, if you don't retreat, I don't guarantee that your life will be kept. Mo Xianfeng sneered, and the demonic bead in his hand burst out with a stronger magical aura, which directly shocked Su Qingli several feet away. Then his figure flashed and he rushed away. Not good. Su Qingli's face changed and she calmed her body. The long whip in her hand turned into a ray of light and shadow, trying to capture Mo Xianfeng, but her speed was finally one step slower, and Mo Xuanfeng's hand was about to touch the magic sword. Just as the thousand horns broke out, Lin Ruochen suddenly rushed out, and the starry sword exploded with all his might. The sword light fell like the stars, forcing Mo Xianfeng to take a step back. Mo Xianfeng didn't expect that this boy would dare to take action, and there was a flash of anger in his eyes, and he immediately snorted coldly, looking for death. He slapped out with a palm, and the magic was as hot as the tide. Lin Ruochen had no time to dodge and was directly hit in the chest. He flew out and smashed hard on the stone wall. Blood overflowed from the corner of his mouth, and his body could hardly move. Listen! Zhang Haoren shouted, and the giant drama slapped, trying to save the picture, but the black-angled virtual videos seemed to be crazy and forced him to stop. Su Qingli finally passed a flash of movement in her eyes. She gritted her teeth, and the long whip in her hand shone brightly, and her spirit stormed out like a tide. She emptied the shadows around her. She flashed her body and came beside Lin Ruochen, stretched out her hand and pressed it on his chest. A soft white light flowed in slowly, helping him to calm down and hurt. How come you are so moved? Her voice was low, and she was helpless, as if she had never expected Lin Ruochen to lose her life for this sword. Lin Ruochen opened his eyes reluctantly, and a bitter smile appeared on the corner of his mouth. This drama cannot fall on his hands. I can feel that it is very important. Su Qingli was silent for a moment, finally a little bit, turned around and looked at Mo Xianfeng, with a flash of determination in her eyes. Okay, since you have such an opinion, I will join hands with you and hold him. Speaking of the slightest, she swung her whip and her spirit exploded, and she had a fierce exchange with Mo Xianfeng again. Lin Ruochen stood up with Zhang Haoren's help, holding the sword's hand trembled slightly, and his eyes were still staring at the magic sword, as if he had made up some determination. The battle became more and more intense, and the spirit in the valley was almost turned upside down. In this chaos, the air around the divine sword suddenly burst, as if awakened by some force, and a sound of clear birds came out, rushing into the sky. Lin Ruochen was shocked and felt that the secret of this drama was more than just what they saw. The battle in the island valley has entered a white heat, and the air is filled with heavy spiritual waves and the fishy smell of magic. The stone wall is torn apart by the slaying light and the black air, and the gravel falls, making a dull sound. Su Qingli's white clothes were stained with a few smears of dust. The light flashes of the long whip and dance turned into light blades, colliding with Mo Xuanfeng's magic. Every time the exchange was filled with waves, making the entire valley tremble. Her face turned paler, and it seemed that her spiritual energy was consumed very much, but her eyes were still as icy as ice, and she had no intention of regressing. Lin Ruochen leaned against Zhang Haoren, and his chest felt ache. Just now, Mo Xuanfeng's palm almost shattered his veins. If Su Qingli hadn't acted to calm down and injured him in time, he would probably not be able to stand up even if he stood up. He gritted his teeth and stared at the ancient magic sword from the distance. The sound of the clear bird radiated from the sword became more and more resonant, as if it had a certain kind of common bird with his star radiance, which made his heart swell with him with a throbbing that was difficult to describe. If you are chaotic, don't come. In this situation, we can only save our lives first. Zhang Haoren held him and slapped the black and black videos of the dancing giant drama, and the sound was filled with anxiety. Although he was not weak in strength, he felt a little difficult to face these constant streams of magical shadows, and dense beads of sweat were poured out from his head. Lin Ruochen didn't reply, but just looked down at the long sword in his hand, with a flash of prick in his eyes. He knew that he was not Mo Xuanfeng's opponent at all, but the divine sword's attraction to him was like an invisible line, which made him feel distracted. He could feel that this sword was not only a treasure, but also a key to a secret, and may even be related to the fate of the entire Tianxuan Great Land. "My brother, help me hold those shadows. I must get close to that sword." Lin Ruochen finally opened his mouth. His voice was low and sandy, with unquestionable determination. Zhang Haoren was stunned and turned to look at him. Seeing the almost crazy thought in his eyes, he couldn't help but say, "You guy, you're almost gone, and you're still thinking about that broken sword? No, I can't let you die. Sister brother." Lin Ruochen raised his head suddenly, his eyes as sharp as a sword. "I'm not for myself. If this sword falls into Mo Xuanfeng's hands, you will know the consequences better than me. I won't come to you this time." Zhang Haoren gritted his teeth and saw Lin Ruochen's appearance. Finally, he still sighed and pointed his head hard. "Okay. But remember, if you can't help it, go back immediately, don't show off your strength," he said. He pushed Lin Ruochen suddenly, and the giant drama slammed, and the drama was as angry as a rainbow. He directly swept the dark shadows around him, and then shouted, "Go! I'll give you the top." Lin Ruochen clicked his head a little, took a deep breath, and pressed the blood that was swelling inside his lower body, held the long sword tightly, and rushed towards the direction where the magic sword was. Although his pace was unstable, each step was incomparable, as if he had made up a certain determination. On the other side, the battle between Su Qingli and Mo Xuanfeng has reached its most critical moment. The magic pearl in Mo Xuanfeng's hand shone brightly, and countless black air stormed out like a tide, turning into a huge demon claw, and directly slamming Su Qingli away. Su Qingli swung her long whip, and the spirit turned into a giant net, trying to hold the demon's claws, but the magic was unusual and tear the spirit net open, forcing her to take a few steps back. "Su Qingli, your spirit is almost limiting, right? If you don't retreat, this sword will be mine." Mo Xuanfeng sneered, with a flash of pride in his eyes, and his figure flashed, and he rushed towards the magic sword again. Su Qingli gritted her teeth, and the long whip in her hand rose again, barely holding his attack. At the same time, she turned around and saw Lin Ruochen approaching the divine sword. Her eyebrows slightly snaked and said in a low voice, "This kid is really not afraid of death." She hesitated for a moment, finally made up her mind and pinched a complicated method in her hand. Her spirit suddenly burst out, as if she had unbuttoned a seal, and a powerful force instantly rolled across the entire valley. Her breath became even more slim, like a real immortal coming to the world, and even Mo Xuanfeng's actions were destroyed. "Nine Heavens immortal art, spirit moon is banned." Su Qingli shouted softly, and the long whip in her hand turned into a ray of moonlight, directly covering Mo Xuanfeng's shell. The moonlight roamed like a chain, trapping him in place, unable to move. "Damn it, you actually unsealed the seal?" Mo Xuanfeng's face changed, and a flash of anger flashed in his eyes. The light of the demon pearl in his hand was crazy and flickered. He tried to scatter the picture, but the moonlight was abnormal and he could not remove it no matter how hard he slapped it. Su Qingli ignored him and just turned to Lin Ruochen, with a low voice, "I can only trap him for an incense stick of time. Hurry up, get close to the sword, but remember, don't pull it out, otherwise you can't afford the consequences." The ancient magic sword was so close to him. The complex runes on the sword's body emitted a faint cold light, and the sound of dragon chanting was hidden in the air, which made his heart shake. He stretched out his hand and approached the handle, but just as the fingertips were about to touch, a powerful recoil force suddenly exploded, shocking him several steps back, and blood spilled out of the corners of his mouth again. Sure enough, it's not that simple. Lin Ruochen gritted his teeth, looked down at his palm, and there was no thinning in his eyes. He closed his eyes, his divine consciousness spread out, and tried to establish a certain connection with the divine drama. The star sword was moving smoothly in his body, and there was a starlight flash hidden around him, which created a subtle co-bearing with the divine sword's atmosphere. At this moment, the divine sword suddenly sounded a clear bird, and the body of the sword was shining brightly. Numerous shadows appeared on the sword, turning into light blades, directly swaying Lin Ruochen. Lin Ruochen's heart was tightened and almost instinctively slammed the sword. The stars exploded with all their strength. The sword light was like a galaxy, colliding with the light blades, making a harsh blast sound. "Ruochen, be careful." Zhang Haoren looked at this scene far away, his heart twitching, but he was caught by the black shadow and could not let go of himself, so he could only shout a reminder. Lin Ruochen bit his teeth tightly and carried the striking of the light blades. His body kept retreating. He was swept by the sword, but his eyes became more and more stable. He could feel that this drama was not a single pure attack, but was trying to explore him, to see if his drama was pure enough and whether it deserved its recognition. "My sword will never retreat." Lin Ruochen growled, stopped suddenly, and swept the long sword in his hand. The second style of the star sword, Star Sea Break, was first used. The sword light was like a vast sea of stars. In an instant, the light blades were swallowed and then they rushed away. The divine sword seemed to feel his determination, and the sword body became slightly slight. Then the light stopped, and all the shadows disappeared in an instant. Lin Ruochen gasped heavily, stood in front of the stone platform, and finally reached out his hand again and held the handle. This time, there was no recoil force and no attack. The sword seemed to have recognized him and was held obediently in his hand. "It's done." Lin Ruochen smiled at the corner of his mouth, but he hadn't waited for him to be excited for too long. A strong torrent of memories suddenly stormed into his brain from the slap. Countless pictures flashed like horselights, making his eyes dark and almost pass directly. Among those pictures are the battle scenes of ancient drama cultivators, the inventive story of the Tianxuan land, and even the real experience of this drama. It is not only a weapon, but also a key to a taboo, and in that space is sealed with terrifying power that can destroy the entire land. This is what? Lin Ruochen gritted his teeth and tried to digest these memories, but the impact in the brain was too strong, which made him almost unable to think. At this moment, Mo Xianfeng finally wiped out Su Qingli's bundle, and a flash of light flashed in his eyes, and suddenly rushed over. "Lin Ruochen, hand over the sword." Mo Xianfeng roared, and the magic pearl in his hand shone brightly, and the magic air rushed towards Lin Ruochen like a tide, which seemed to be so enraged. Su Qingli saw her face, and her long whip swung her to try to hold her, but her spirit had almost dried up. As soon as the whip shadow came into contact with the magic, she was shaken away. The whole person stumbled back several steps, and a silk of blood was overflowing from the corner of her mouth. "Ruochen, go quickly." Zhang Haoren saw that the situation was not good, and suddenly rushed over. The giant sword slapped and forced a part of the magic. However, his cultivation level was too far from Mo Xianfeng. He was shocked in just a moment and fell heavily to the ground, not knowing life and death. Lin Ruochen finally passed by the torrent of memory at this time. When he saw this scene, he had a flash of anger in his eyes. He held the magic sword tightly and stood up suddenly. The light of the sword flashed, and an unprecedented force exploded from his body. The power of the stars and the magic sword perfectly merged. The magic light fell like a galaxy, directly tearing a hole in Mo Xianfeng's magic. "Mo Xianfeng, you can't take this sword." Lin Ruochen shouted softly, and his figure flashed, and the sword light rushed Mo Xianfeng away. Mo Xianfeng didn't expect that he would suddenly burst out such a powerful force. His face changed and he hurriedly urged the demon yuan bead to resist, but the sword light was unusually strong, shattering the magic air, forcing him to retreat several feet. "Don't die." Why is this boy's drama so strong suddenly? Mo Xianfeng gritted his teeth, his eyes flashing with a flash of unwillingness, but he also knew that Lin Ruochen was no longer the seriously injured boy just now. If he fought hard, he might be very angry. "Humph, you're leaving. I don't want this sword at all, but Lin Ruochen, remember, this matter is not over." Mo Xianfeng snorted coldly, and the light of the demon pearl in his hand flashed, and the whole person turned into a black air, and instantly disappeared into the depths of the eye valley. It seemed that he had chosen to retreat at a while. Lin Ruochen saw him leave, and finally relaxed his voice, but the injuries inside and the memorial shock made him unable to hold back. He shook his body and fell to the ground, inserting the magic knife in his hand on the ground, barely supporting his body. Su Qingli walked over slowly, her face still pale, but there was a little more complexity in her eyes. Lin Ruochen gasped heavily and looked up at her, with a flash of confusion in his eyes. "You have known the secret of this sword for a long time, right? Why don't you tell me?" Su Qingli was silent for a moment, and finally said, "Some things are useless if you know them. Behind this sword, the survival of the Tianxuan land and even the secret of the Nine Heavens immortal realm. I thought I could seal it forever, but now, since you have become its master, then the next path is only for you to walk yourself." Speaking of the slightest, she turned her head and looked far away, with her eyes deep and remote, as if she had seen something unknown. Lin Ruochen still wanted to ask again, but the injuries inside made his eyes dark, and his mind became blurry. He only heard Su Qingli's low voice say, "Life well, boy." By the time Lin Ruochen woke up again, it was 3 days later. He found that he was lying in a quiet room of the Yunxiao sect, and his injuries had been dealt with. Zhang Haoren was sitting aside, looking at him with a smile on his face. When he woke up, he relaxed his breath. "Ruochen, you are waking up. If you don't wake up, I'm going to call the sect leader." Zhang Haoren grinned, with a smile on his face, and he was afraid. It was obvious that he had not been worried about him in the past few days. Lin Ruochen sat up reluctantly, looked down at the magic sword beside him, and a burst of confusion flashed in his eyes. He also remembered Su Qingli's last words and those scenes in the torrent of memory, and felt that he seemed to have fallen into a storm that was far beyond imagination. "Where's Su Qingli?" he suddenly asked, his voice a little sad. Zhang Haoren snatched his head. "The woman has left long ago. Before leaving, she said, 'Let you get hurt and don't run away.' Hey, this woman is mysterious, so it's definitely not simple." Lin Ruochen didn't say anything, but just silently held the magic sword tightly and felt the cold touch on the sword's body. He knew that Su Qingli's departure did not mean ending, but rather a new beginning. The taboo was ecstatic, the power of destruction, and even Mo Xuanfeng's sarcasm were like an invisible network, approaching him. "My brother, help me." Lin Ruochen suddenly raised his head and his eyes calmed down. "I want to close it for a while and finally master the power of this sword. And, help me hear the news about the ancient world of Tianxuan land." Zhang Haoren was stunned, and immediately clicked on the head, patted his shoulder. "Okay, my brother, help you. But remember, don't work too hard, life is the most important thing." Lin Ruochen pointed his head, his eyes fell on the magic sword again, and a difficult light flashed in his eyes. Although the war in the island valley ended, it was only after his trial that began. Far away, between the mountains of the Yunxiao sword sect, clouds are surrounded by clouds, and there is a dramatic light that breaks through the sky, as if it indicates that a bigger storm is coming.